I am a man of discipline, but she has become my greatest weakness. Scan the perimeter. Check the exits. Count the exits. It's a protocol I've executed 1,000 times since I was old enough to fire a weapon. But for the past 8 months, my routine has included a detour that makes my head of security absolutely furious. Take the scenic route, I told the driver. The interior of the Range Rover was silent, insulated from the chaos of the city by armored glass and acoustic dampening. I sat in the back, the leather cool against my dress shirt, watching the drizzle streak the windows. We turned onto Maple Avenue. It was a neighborhood the city planners had abandoned years ago, full of flickering neon signs and potholes deep enough to swallow a compact car. It was Castellano territory adjacent, dangerous ground for a Volkov to be idling in, but I didn't give a damn. Slower, I said. The driver, a man named Victor who'd served my father for 15 years, met my eyes in the rearview mirror. He didn't approve. He knew exactly what I was searching for. He slowed the heavy vehicle to a crawl. There it was, Ameli's, a ridiculous name for a bakery. It sounded precious, insignificant. But the amber glow spilling from the storefront window was the warmest thing in this entire God-forsaken metropolis. It was golden and inviting, cutting through the gray mist. I watched, I waited, and then she appeared. Seraphina. I didn't know her surname. I only knew the name embroidered in crimson thread on her cream-colored apron. She was moving behind the counter, arranging pastries in the display case. It was nearly midnight. She should have been home. She should have been behind a locked door with an alarm system. Instead, she was humming. She did this little spin as she wiped down the espresso machine, her hips swaying to music I couldn't hear. A lock of chestnut hair had escaped her ponytail and was falling across her face. She blew it away with a puff of breath, scrubbed a stubborn spot on the chrome, and then twirled around to straighten the chairs. My chest constricted. It was a physical sensation, a tightness beneath my ribs that had nothing to do with the Kevlar vest I wore beneath my shirt. She looked exhausted. Even from the street, I could see the shadows under her eyes. She worked too much. She was too thin. She needed someone to cook her a proper meal and force her to sleep for 10 hours straight. Victor cleared his throat gently. Sir. I know, I said. Go. We accelerated. The image of her dancing alone in the empty bakery vanished into the rainy night, replaced by the blur of wet asphalt. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. The image of her was seared onto my retinas. It was pathetic. I was Davian Volkov, heir to the largest criminal organization on the East Coast. I could have any woman I wanted. I could walk into the most exclusive clubs in the city and leave with a socialite on each arm. But I didn't want a socialite. I wanted the girl with flour in her hair and a hole in her canvas shoes. Tonight, the weight of succession felt heavier than usual. My father, the pack-hen, was pushing for a decisive move against the Castellano family. The conflict had been simmering for years, a cold war of territorial disputes and intercepted shipments, but now the water was boiling over. There were discussions of alliances, of arranged marriages, of blood that needed to be spilled. I was exhausted by the noise. I was exhausted by the violence. I opened my eyes. We were only a few blocks from the bakery, heading toward the expressway that would take us to the compound. Turn around, I said. Victor hesitated. Boss, we're vulnerable out here. The chatter on the encrypted channels is elevated tonight. Turn the car around, Victor. He didn't argue a second time. He spun the wheel, the tires hissing slightly on the wet pavement. We headed back. I was violating my own protocol. For 8 months, I had remained in the shadows. I watched her because it centered me. It reminded me that there was a universe where people worried about overproof dough and utility bills, not explosive devices and federal warrants. If I touched her world, I would contaminate it. I knew that. I was oil, she was water. But tonight I didn't care. I needed to exist in the same space as her just once. I needed to breathe the air she breathed. "Park here," I said. "Keep the engine running." I opened the door before the bodyguard in the passenger seat could exit to open it for me. The rain hit my face, cold and sharp. I buttoned my jacket, checking the line to ensure my sidearm was concealed, and strode across the sidewalk. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped inside. The smell overwhelmed me instantly. Vanilla, yeast, butter, and underneath it all, the scent of industrial cleaning solution. Seraphina was behind the counter tallying the register. She froze, her head snapped up, her eyes went wide. They were the color of cognac, amber and brown, and startlingly clear. She recognized me. I could see the awareness flash across her face. She had noticed the SUV. She had probably wondered who the stalker was. I stopped in the center of the shop. It was smaller than it appeared from outside. The floor was checkered linoleum, cracked in places. The display case was mostly empty, just a few lonely croissants remaining. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was husky, like she hadn't spoken in hours. It scraped over my nerves in the most exquisite way possible. I walked to the counter. Up close, she looked even more tired. There was a smudge of powdered sugar on her cheekbone. I had a sudden violent urge to reach out and wipe it away with my thumb. I shoved my hands into my pockets to keep them from doing something reckless. "Coffee?" I said. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet space. "Black." She blinked. "We closed 10 minutes ago. I turned the machine off." I stared at her. I didn't leave. I couldn't. Now that I was this close, the gravity of her was pulling me in. I wanted to remain here. I wanted to bolt the door, draw the shades, and simply exist in this space where the most significant problem was a powered-down coffee machine. "I'll wait for it to heat up," I said. She hesitated. She glanced at the door, then back at me. She was cautious. Good. She should be. I was a wolf in expensive clothing, standing in her grandmother's kitchen. "Okay," she whispered. She turned her back to me to fiddle with the machine. I watched the curve of her neck, the way the stray hairs curled against her pale skin. She was tense. Her shoulders were hunched near her ears. "I'm Davian," I said. I don't know why I said it. She knew who I was. Everyone knew the name Volkov. But I wanted to say it to her. I wanted to hear her say it back. "I know," she said, not turning around. The machine hissed and sputtered. "You're the man who watches me from the car." I felt a flush of heat creep up my neck. I wasn't accustomed to being called out. I was the predator, the one who moved in silence. "I appreciate the pastries," I lied. I had never consumed a single item from this establishment. "You've never come in to purchase any," she pointed out. She turned around, a paper cup in her hand. She placed it on the counter. It was steaming. "On the house," she said. "Just please don't park in the loading zone anymore. It frightens the delivery drivers." I stared at the cup, then I looked up at her. Her eyes were defiant despite the tremor in her hands. She was terrified, but she was holding her ground. I smiled. It felt rusty on my face. "I'll relocate the car," I said. I reached for the cup. Our fingers brushed. It was like touching a live wire. A jolt shot straight up my arm and settled heavy in my groin. She gasped softly and pulled her hand back, cradling it against her chest. We stared at each other, the air between us crackling with sudden thick tension. That's when my instincts screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a sensation. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The air pressure in the room shifted. I looked out the front window. A car was rolling down the street, a sedan, dark gray, no headlights. It was moving too slowly. It wasn't passing by. It was hunting. My heart stopped. Then it restarted with a violent thud. "Get down," I roared. Seraphina looked confused. She opened her mouth to speak. I didn't wait, I didn't think. I vaulted over the counter. I crashed into her, wrapping my arms around her waist and twisting my body in midair. I slammed us both to the hard floor behind the counter, just as the world exploded. The sound was deafening, automatic gunfire. It shredded the silence, tearing through the glass, the wood, the air. Pop, 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 pop. The display case shattered, raining shards of glass down on us. The espresso machine exploded in a hiss of steam. I covered her completely. My large frame eclipsed hers, shielding her from the chaos. I pressed her face into my chest, my hand cupping the back of her head to protect her skull. She was screaming, but I couldn't hear it over the roar of the guns and the blood rushing in my ears. I waited for the burn. I waited for the bullet that would punch through my back and end me. I didn't care as long as it struck me and not her. Then silence. Tires screeched outside. My security detail was returning fire now, their heavy handguns barking in the street, but the sedan was already speeding away. The bakery was quiet, saved for the sound of falling glass and the hiss of the broken espresso machine. The smell of vanilla was gone, replaced by the sharp metallic tang of gunpowder. I lay still for a second, breathing hard. I was alive. I did a quick mental assessment. No pain, no punctures. Seraphina, I rasped. She was trembling beneath me, a violent shaking that rattled her bones. She was clutching my lapels so hard her knuckles were white. Seraphina, talk to me. Are you hit? I pushed myself up on my elbows, hovering over her. Her eyes were squeezed shut. Her face was pale, dusted with fine glass powder. I don't know, she whispered. It hurts. I looked down. The white apron, the pristine white apron I had watched for months, was turning crimson. A dark wet stain was spreading across her left side, just above her hip. No. The word ripped out of my throat, a guttural sound of pure horror. No, no, no. I sat up, dragging her with me. I ripped the apron strings, pulling the fabric away. Her gray t-shirt was soaked. I pulled the hem up with shaking hands. There was a gash along her ribs. It was ugly, jagged, bleeding sluggishly but heavily. A graze, a deep graze, or perhaps a fragment of the bullet had lodged. It wasn't a fatal shot. It wasn't in her lung. But there was so much blood. I looked at my hands. They were coated in it. Her blood. I did this. The realization hit me harder than any bullet could have. I brought this here. I brought the war to her doorstep because I was selfish, because I couldn't stay away. Davian, she whimpered. She looked at the blood on her side, her eyes going wide and glassy. Am I dying? No, I snarled. I pressed my hand against the wound, applying pressure. She cried out, a sharp, high sound that sliced through my heart. Look at me, Seraphina, look at me. You're not dying, I won't allow it. The door to the bakery was kicked open. Victor rushed in, gun drawn, scanning the room. Boss, you clear? We need a medic, I shouted, now. Victor looked at Seraphina, then at me. Boss, the police will be here in 3 minutes. We have to leave. We can't be here when law enforcement arrives. The media. Screw the media, I yelled. I scooped Seraphina up into my arms. She was light, too light. Her head lolled against my shoulder. She was going into shock. We're taking her, I said. Victor's eyes widened. Boss, we can't. She's a civilian. We drop her at the emergency room entrance and we leave. That's protocol. Protocol? I laughed, and it was a terrifying sound. Protocol went out the window the moment I walked in here. Open the damn door, Victor. I stood up, holding her tight against my chest. Her blood was soaking into my expensive suit, staining my shirt, warm and sticky. I didn't care. I would burn every suit I owned if it meant she was okay. Seraphina looked up at me. Her eyes were losing focus. My shop, she whispered, My glass. I'll buy you 1,000 shops, I swore. I walked through the debris, crunching over the ruins of her life. I carried her out into the rain. The street was chaotic. My men were shouting, securing the perimeter. The dark SUV was waiting, the back door already open. I slid inside, pulling her onto my lap. Go, I ordered, the compound. Victor jumped in the front. Boss, the compound, your father. Drive. The car peeled out, leaving the shattered bakery behind. I looked down at Seraphina. She was shivering. I pulled off my jacket and wrapped it around her, tucking it tight to keep her warm. I kept my hand pressed hard against her side. You stay with me, I commanded. You hear me, you stay with me. She blinked slowly. Why, she murmured. Her voice was slurring. Because, I whispered, brushing a piece of glass out of her hair. Because I'm not finished with you yet. She closed her eyes. Her breathing was shallow. I stared out the window at the blurring city lights. My hand was cramping from the pressure I was applying to her wound. The rage inside me was building, a cold, dark inferno. Whoever did this, whoever ordered the hit, I would find them. I would strip the flesh from their bones. But first, I had to save her. I pulled her closer, burying my face in the curve of her neck. She smelled like vanilla and iron. I got you, I whispered into her skin. I got you.
Chapter 2, Seraphina. Waking up was a battle against gravity. My body felt heavy, sinking into a mattress that was far too plush to be my own. My eyelids were glued shut, and my mouth tasted like cotton and old copper. For a long moment, I just floated in the darkness, trying to piece together why my alarm clock hadn't sounded. I had the opening shift. I needed to prep the dough. If I didn't get up, Mrs. Chen would have to do the heavy lifting, and her back was problematic this week. I tried to roll over. A scream tore through my mind, though it emerged as nothing more than a ragged gasp. Pain, white-hot and blinding, exploded in my left side. It wasn't an ache. It was a tearing sensation, like someone had taken a branding iron and shoved it between my ribs. The agony snapped the tether of sleep instantly. My eyes flew open. I wasn't in my apartment. I wasn't in my lumpy twin bed with the drafty window. I was in a room that looked like something from a historical drama. The ceilings were impossibly high, lined with dark, polished wood. Heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight against the day, letting in only slivers of gray light. The air smelled different here. It didn't smell like the city, exhaust and rain. It smelled like expensive leather, cedarwood, and the sharp chemical sting of antiseptic. I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my vision. There was a steady, rhythmic beeping somewhere to my right, a monitor. I turned my head, gritting my teeth against the pull in my side. He was there. The man from the bakery, the customer with the expensive suits and the intense eyes, the one I had secretly nicknamed the Suit because he never spoke, never smiled, just watched. He was sitting in a wingback chair in the corner of the room, looking like a statue carved from misery. He was still wearing the same clothes from last night, or was it last night? His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But the shirt wasn't white anymore. It was stained with dried, rusty brown smears. Blood. My blood. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The coffee machine hissing, the bell chiming, him walking in, filling the small space with his overwhelming presence. And then the noise, the glass shattering, the feeling of being tackled to the floor, the wet warmth spreading across my apron. I tried to sit up, panic clawing at my throat. "Don't move," he said. His voice was rough, like he'd been swallowing gravel. He moved instantly, rising from the chair with a fluid grace that shouldn't have been possible for a man of his size. He was by the bedside in 2 strides, his hands hovering over me, terrifyingly gentle. "You'll tear the stitches," he warned. "Lay back down." I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. The monitor sped up, betraying my fear with a frantic beep, beep, beep. Where am I? I whispered. My voice was barely a croak. Is this a hospital? No, he said. He poured water from a crystal carafe into a glass and held it to my lips. Drink. I took a sip because I didn't have the strength to argue. The water was cool and clean. I pulled away, gasping. You're not answering me. Where am I? Who are you? He set the glass down on the nightstand with a heavy clink. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the exhaustion etched into the lines of his face. His eyes were dark, almost black in the dim light, and filled with something that looked painfully like guilt. I am Davian, he said. Davian Volkov, and you're at my family's compound. The name dropped into the room like a grenade. Volkov. The air left my lungs. I knew that name. Everyone in this city knew that name. You didn't live in Verona Heights without knowing who controlled the streets. The Volkovs were old money, dirty money, dangerous money. They were the reason certain neighborhoods were safe and others were battlegrounds. They were the reason the police sometimes looked the other way. I looked at the man standing over me. The sharp jawline, the predator's stillness, the SUV that idled outside my work. He wasn't just a wealthy customer, he was the prince. Oh my God, I breathed. I tried to scoot back against the pillows, putting distance between us. The movement pulled at my wound again, and I hissed, tears pricking my eyes. Easy, he murmured. He reached out as if to steady me, but stopped inches from my arm, curling his fingers into a fist. I'm not going to hurt you, Seraphina. You brought me to the Volkov compound, I asked, my voice rising in hysteria. Why am I not at General Hospital? Because you wouldn't have made it to General without bleeding out in the ambulance, he said flatly. And because I wasn't going to leave you exposed in a public ER with a gunshot wound that I caused. He caused. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a soft gray t-shirt that wasn't mine. It was huge, hanging off my shoulder. Someone had changed me. I felt a flush of shame and fear. You changed my clothes. A nurse, he corrected quickly. We have a private medical wing. My family's physician performed the surgery. He stitched you up. Surgery? I stared at him. How bad is it? It grazed your ribs, he said, his gaze dropping to the bandage hidden beneath the shirt. It tore through the oblique muscle. It missed your internal organs, but it was deep. You lost a lot of blood. I closed my eyes, the reality of my situation crashing down on me. I had been shot. I was in a mafia compound, and I was talking to the heir of a criminal empire who had apparently been stalking me for pastries. I need to leave, I said, opening my eyes. I can't be here. I have rent due on the 1st. I have to open the bakery tomorrow. Mrs. Chen can't do the heavy lifting. Davian let out a short, humorless laugh. He ran a hand through his dark hair, messing it up. The bakery is a crime scene, Seraphina. There's no opening tomorrow. The front of the building is destroyed. My stomach dropped. Destroyed. Demolished, he confirmed. I felt tears spill over my lashes, hot and angry. That job was everything. It was my tuition money. It was my rent. It was the only place in the world where I felt useful. I have to go, I repeated, swinging my legs toward the edge of the bed. I groaned as the pain spiked, turning my vision white at the edges. I gritted my teeth and pushed through it. I can't afford this. I don't have insurance for a private surgeon. I don't have money for... Stop. He stepped into my space, his thighs bracing against the mattress, effectively blocking me from getting up. He placed his hands on my shoulders, not pushing me down, just holding me there, grounding me. His grip was warm and firm. Money is not a conversation we're having, he said. His voice dropped an octave, becoming steel. You're not paying for anything. I tried to shrug him off, but I was weak as a kitten. I don't accept charity, especially not from people like you. People like me, he asked. His eyes narrowed slightly. You mean the people who get you shot? Yes, I snapped. Why were they shooting? They weren't robbing the register. They didn't even come inside. They were shooting at you. Yes, he admitted. He didn't flinch away from the accusation. He owned it. They were shooting at me. I was being tracked. I stepped into your world and I brought the war with me. Then let me go, I cried. If you're the target, then being here is the most dangerous place I could be. I'm a baker, Davian. I make croissants. I don't do gunfights. I need to go home to my apartment and my cat and pretend this never happened. Hamlet is fine, he said. I froze. What? Your cat, he said calmly. Hamlet, the gray tabby with the torn ear. He's been fed. I sent someone to your apartment an hour ago to check on him and ensure your window was secured. The heir left the room. How do you know my cat's name? I whispered. I never told you that. We've never had a conversation longer than coffee, black, and have a nice day. Davian pulled back, removing his hands from my shoulders. He stood up straight, towering over the bed. He looked uncomfortable now, shifting his weight. He looked at the window, then back at me. I know you live on Maple Avenue, apartment 3C, he said. I know you walk home because you're saving for a vehicle. I know you buy your groceries on Wednesday evenings because that's when they restock the produce. I stared at him, horror dawning on me. The black SUV, the idling engine, the way I sometimes felt eyes on me when I was unlocking my front door. You've been watching me, I said, my voice was trembling. You're a stalker. I'm a protector, he corrected, though he looked like he tasted bile. Or I tried to be. Clearly, I failed. You're disturbed, I said, shrinking back against the headboard. Maybe, he agreed. He walked over to the window and pulled back the heavy curtain just an inch, peering out at the grounds below. But that doesn't change the reality of the situation. Which is what? I asked. That I'm your prisoner. That you're under my protection, he said. He turned back to face me, his face hard and unyielding. The vulnerability I thought I saw earlier was gone, replaced by the mask of the prince. The men who shot at us saw you, Seraphina. They saw me cover you. They saw me carry you out. So in my world, that makes you a weakness, he explained. It makes you leverage. If I send you back to your apartment on Maple Avenue, they will find you. They will finish what they started just to send a message to me. I swallowed hard. My mouth felt dry. So I'm stuck here. Until you're healed, he said. Until I know who ordered the hit and I've handled it. Handled it, I repeated. You mean murdered them? Yes. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't apologize for it. He just stated it like it was a weather report. I can't stay here, Davian. I don't belong here. Look at this room. Look at me. I'm a nobody. I'm just the girl who pours your coffee. You're not a nobody, he said fiercely. He walked back to the bed, leaning down until his face was level with mine. His eyes searched mine, intense and burning. You're the only innocent thing I've ever known, and I'll be damned if I let my world destroy you more than it already has. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face again. I flinched. He froze, his jaw tightening. He pulled his hand back slowly, clenching it into a fist at his side. Rest, he commanded. The physician will be in to check your vitals in an hour. If you need anything, pain medication, food, water, you press that button on the rail. He pointed to a small red button on the side of the hospital-grade bed frame I was lying in. Where are you going? I asked. I hated that I asked. I should have wanted him to leave. He was the danger. He was the reason I had a hole in my side. But the room felt impossibly large and terrifying without him. I have work to do, he said. His voice was cold, detached. I have to clean up my mess. He turned and walked toward the heavy oak door. Davian, I called out. He stopped, his hand on the brass knob. He didn't turn around. Why? I asked. Why did you come in tonight? You never come in, you always stay in the car. Why tonight? He stood there for a long moment. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice so low I almost didn't catch it. Because I was tired of watching, he said. He opened the door and walked out, leaving me alone in the silence of the compound. trapped in a gilded cage with a wound in my side and a very dangerous man in my head.
Chapter 3, Davian. I stood on the stone terrace overlooking the north gardens. The night air was biting, damp with the rain that had finally stopped falling. But I didn't feel the cold. I felt only the heat of the rage simmering under my skin. I took a drag from a cigarette. I hadn't smoked in 3 years. I quit the day I took over the legitimate operations of the family business because board members didn't appreciate the smell of smoke on a CEO's suit. But tonight I needed the burn. I needed the nicotine to steady my hands. They were still shaking, just a fraction, a tremor that no one else would notice, but I felt it deep in the muscles of my forearms. It was the adrenaline crash, the aftermath of holding a dying girl in my arms and praying to a God I stopped believing in years ago. "You're making a mistake." I didn't turn around. I knew the sound of those footsteps, heavy, measured, expensive Italian leather on marble. "Father," I said, blowing a stream of gray smoke into the darkness. Davian Volkov stepped up beside me. He was an older, harder version of me. The same dark hair, though his was streaked with silver. The same jawline, though his was softened by age and too much vodka. He was wearing his silk robe, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He looked like the master of the estate. He looked like a man who hadn't just almost lost his only son. "The girl," he said, "it's messy, Davian." "She has a name," I said, "Seraphina." "She's a civilian," my father continued, "a waitress, and now she's a witness to an assassination attempt on the heir. She has to go." "She didn't see anything," I said. "I covered her." "She saw enough." My father took a sip of his drink, staring out at the manicured hedges. He looked bored. That was the thing about Ruslan. Violence didn't faze him. Collateral damage was just a line item on a balance sheet. "Pay her off," he said calmly. 75,000. That should cover her medical expenses and buy her silence. Get her out of the compound tonight. Put her in a private clinic if you must, but get her out of my house. She's a liability." I laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. 75,000, I asked. "Is that the going rate for a bullet wound these days?" "It's generous for a girl who pours coffee for minimum wage," my father said. I turned on him. Then I flicked the cigarette over the terrace railing, watching the cherry ember fall into the darkness like a dying star. "She's not going anywhere," I said. Ruslan turned his head slowly to look at me. His eyes were cold chips of ice. "Excuse me." "She stays," I said. I stepped closer to him. I was taller than him now, broader. I used that size, letting my shadow fall over him. "She stays until she's healed. She stays until I know who ordered the hit. And if you try to move her, if you try to threaten her or buy her off, I will burn this city to the ground, and I will start with this house." My father's expression didn't change, but the air around us grew heavy. This was the dance we did, the old lion and the young lion circling each other. He wanted me to be ruthless. He wanted me to be him. But he hated it when I turned that ruthlessness against him. "You're thinking with your anatomy," he said disdainfully. "It makes you weak." "I'm thinking with my honor," I snapped. "I brought the war to her workplace. I'm responsible for her blood. That makes her mine to deal with." He scoffed. "You're obsessed. I've seen the reports. The driver logs. You go to that bakery every night. You think I don't know. You think I don't watch you." I stiffened. Of course he knew. Nothing happened in this family without Ruslan knowing. "Then you know I won't change my mind," I said. He stared at me for a long moment, searching for a crack in my armor. He wouldn't find one, not tonight. "Fine," he said, turning back to the gardens. "Keep your pet, but when the wolves come for her, and they will come, don't expect me to save her." "I don't need you to save her," I said. "That's my job." I walked away before I did something treasonous, like punching the pack-hen in the jaw. I moved through the hallways of the compound. It was a mausoleum of a house, large, cold, empty. It was filled with priceless art and antique furniture, but it had never felt like a home. It felt like a fortress. And now I had brought Seraphina into the dungeon. I stopped outside the door to the medical wing. I took a deep breath, trying to scrub the anger from my face. I checked my shirt. I had changed out of the bloody suit jacket, but I was still wearing the white dress shirt. The blood on the cuff had dried to a rust color. I rolled the sleeves up higher to hide it. I pushed the door open quietly. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors and a small lamp in the corner. I thought she might be asleep. The physician had given her enough pain medication to knock out a horse. But she wasn't asleep. Seraphina was lying on her back, staring up at the intricate crown molding on the ceiling. Her face was pale, almost translucent against the dark pillows. She looked small, frail. I hated it. I hated seeing her like this. In the bakery, she was vibrant. She was always moving, always doing something with her hands. Now she was still, broken. I walked into the room. "You should be sleeping," I said softly. She didn't jump. She didn't look at me. She just kept staring at the ceiling. "The medication makes my head spin," she whispered, "but it doesn't turn off my brain." I pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. The leather creaked. "How's the pain?" "Manageable." She turned her head. Her eyes were glassy, dilated from the medication, but there was a sharpness behind them, a clarity that unsettled me. She looked at me. She looked at the rolled-up sleeves of my shirt. She looked at my hands resting on my knees. "You know about Hamlet," she said. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. I froze. I had slipped up earlier. In my panic, in my desperation to keep her calm, I had told her the cat was fed. I had revealed a card I wasn't supposed to be holding. "Yes," I said. "And you know I live on Maple Avenue." "Yes." "And you know about the groceries and the car I'm saving for." I took a breath. There was no point in lying. The truth was ugly, but it was all I had left to give her. "I know," I said. "How?" she asked, her voice cracked. "How do you know all that, Davian? We never talk. You come in, you order coffee, you leave. How do you know about my life?" I looked down at my hands. They were large, capable of violence, capable of ending life. I hated that they had failed to protect her. "I watched you," I said. She made a small sound in the back of her throat, a whimper. "Why?" I looked up, meeting her gaze. I owed her this. I owed her the unvarnished, disturbing truth. "Because 8 months ago, I buried my mother," I said. The funeral was a circus. Media, rivals, federal agents taking photographs. I felt like I was suffocating. I told the driver to just drive. I didn't care where. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "We stopped at a red light in front of your shop. It was late, raining. And there you were. You were pulling a tray of pastries out of the oven. You burned your finger and you laughed. You put your finger in your mouth and you did a little dance while you waited for the pain to fade." Seraphina stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "I watched you," I continued, my voice low. "You looked happy, you looked genuine. In my world, everyone wears a mask. Everyone wants something. Everyone is scheming. But you were just baking. You were alive." "So you came back," she whispered. "Every night," I admitted. It became the only part of my day that made sense. "I sat in the car and I watched you live your life. I watched you walk home. I watched you feed that ratty cat. I watched you count your tips." I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You were the only clean thing in my filthy life. Watching you, it was like looking through a window at a world I could never touch, a world where things were simple." She shivered. I didn't know if it was from cold or from fear. "You stalked me," she said. "You learned my schedule, you learned my habits." "I protected you," I argued, though I knew it was a weak defense. I made sure no one bothered you on your walk home. I had my men scare off the drug dealers on your corner. I kept you safe." "Safe?" She let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. She winced as the movement pulled at her stitches. She gestured to her bandaged side. "You call this safe?" I flinched. "If you were watching," she said, tears welling in her eyes, "if you knew everything, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you see them coming?" The question hit me like a physical blow. It was the question I had been asking myself for 3 hours. I closed my eyes, the guilt washing over me like acid. "Because I broke the routine," I whispered. I opened my eyes and looked at her. "I broke the rule. I wasn't supposed to go in. I was supposed to stay in the car behind the bulletproof glass. I was supposed to keep the window closed. But tonight the noise in my head was too loud. The pressure was too much. I needed to be close to you. I needed to hear your voice." I reached out, but I stopped myself before I touched the sheet. I was selfish. I was arrogant. I thought I could step into your world for 5 minutes and steal a little bit of your peace. I didn't check the perimeter. I didn't wait for the scout report. I just walked in. I looked at the bandage on her side. "I led them right to you," I said. "I was the beacon. They were tracking me, and I led them straight to the only thing I care about." The silence in the room was deafening. The monitor beeped steadily, marking the time. Seraphina looked at me. Her expression was unreadable. She looked terrified, yes, but she also looked confused. "You care about me?" she asked softly. "You don't even know me." "I know you," I said fiercely. "I know you hate the rain, but you walk in it anyway. I know you hum when you think no one is listening. I know you save the broken pastries for the stray dog in the alley." I stood up, unable to sit still under the weight of her gaze. I walked to the window, looking out at the darkness. "I know enough," I said. "I know enough to know that I ruined you." I heard the rustle of sheets. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now," I said, turning back to face her, "now I fix it. I find the men who did this. I find the person who sold me out and I end them." "And me?" she asked. "You heal," I said. "You stay here behind these walls where no one can touch you. And then," I said, my voice heavy with the lie I was telling myself, "and then I let you go. I send you back to your life, and I never come back to that bakery again." She watched me. She didn't believe me. I didn't believe me either. Because now that I had touched her, now that I had smelled her blood and held her in my arms, the idea of letting her go felt like cutting out my own heart. "Get some sleep, Seraphina," I said. I walked to the door, my hand lingering on the switch. "Davian," she said. I paused. "Thank you," she whispered. I frowned, turning my head. "For what?" "For saving me." I stared at her. She was thanking the man who put a bullet in her side. It was twisted. It was wrong. It made me want to fall to my knees and beg for her forgiveness. "Don't thank me," I said roughly. "Save your thanks for when you survive me." I flipped the switch, plunging the room into darkness, and walked out into the cold hallway, leaving the only light I had ever known behind a closed door.
Chapter 4, Seraphina. 3 weeks is a long time to stare at the same damask wallpaper. It's enough time to count the pattern repeats, 16 fleur-de-lis from the floor to the crown molding. It's enough time to memorize the way the light shifts across the room as the sun moves from east to west, slicing through the heavy velvet curtains. And it's definitely enough time to get used to the devil sitting in the corner. I shifted in the bed, wincing as the movement pulled at the healing skin on my side. The sharp, tearing pain from the first few days had faded into a dull, maddening itch. The physician said it was a good sign. It meant the tissue was knitting back together. To me, it just felt like insects crawling under my skin. I let out a frustrated sigh and punched my pillow, trying to find a comfortable angle. "Stop fidgeting," a deep voice rumbled from the corner. "You'll irritate the wound." I turned my head. Davian was sitting in a high-backed leather armchair he had dragged in from the library. He had turned my recovery room into his command center. There was a sleek laptop balanced on his knees, a stack of files on the small table beside him, and a phone that lit up every 30 seconds with a new crisis. "I'm not fidgeting," I lied. "I'm adjusting, there's a difference." He didn't look up from the screen. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He typed with a kind of controlled violence, like he was punishing the keys. "You're bored," he said. "I'm a prisoner," I countered. "You're a guest," he corrected. I snorted. Guests are allowed to leave. Guests can go for a walk. Guests can use the bathroom without a nurse hovering outside the door like a gargoyle. Davian finally stopped typing. He closed the laptop with a snap and looked at me. He looked exhausted. In the 3 weeks I had been here, I wasn't sure I had seen him sleep. He was always there when I woke up, and he was always there when I drifted off. The dark circles under his eyes were bruising, stark against his pale skin. He had stopped wearing the pristine suit jackets, trading them for button-down shirts with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle, and inked with faint, dark tattoos I couldn't quite make out from this distance. "I'm keeping you alive, Seraphina," he said calmly. "Being bored is a small price to pay for breathing." I hated when he used logic. I hated that he was right. I slumped back against the pillows. "I want to go home, Davian." "I know. I want to see my cat." "I had Hamlet brought to the compound," he said. "He's currently terrorizing the kitchen staff. The cook gave him fresh salmon this morning. He lives better than I do." I blinked. You brought my cat here." "You wouldn't stop asking about him," he said, rubbing a hand over his face. The roughness of his stubble made a scratching sound. "And I was tired of you worrying." I felt a warmth bloom in my chest that had nothing to do with the fever I'd run last week. It was dangerous, this warmth. It was the feeling of being seen, being cared for. "Thank you," I whispered. He waved a hand dismissively, standing up. He stretched, his back popping audibly, and walked over to the side table where a silver coffee service sat. "Coffee?" he asked. "Please." I watched him pour. It was such a domestic task for a man who looked like he could snap a neck with one hand. He poured the dark liquid into a delicate china cup. Then, without asking, he reached for the sugar bowl. 2 spoons, then a splash of heavy cream. He stirred it, the spoon clinking softly against the porcelain, and brought it over to me. He handed it to me, handle facing my right hand so I wouldn't have to twist my injured side. I took a sip. It was perfect, exactly how I made it for myself at the bakery at 4 in the morning. 2 sugars, splash of cream, not milk, cream. I lowered the cup, staring at him over the rim. "You know how I take my coffee," I said quietly. He sat on the edge of the bed. It was a boundary he rarely crossed. Usually, he stayed in his chair in his corner. But today, he seemed heavier, drawn to the comfort of the mattress. "I told you," he said, his voice low. "I watched you." "It's unnerving," I admitted. "It's thorough," he countered. "It's both." He cracked a smile. It was a rare thing, a flash of white teeth that transformed his harsh face into something devastatingly handsome. It made my breath hitch. I realized then that I was in trouble, big trouble. It wasn't just that I was trapped in a mafia compound with a gunshot wound. It was that I was trapped with him. For 3 weeks, he had been my nurse, my guard, my only companion. He read to me when the painkillers made the words swim on the page of my book. He held my hair back once when the antibiotics made me sick. He listened to me ramble about culinary school, about the specific chemistry of sourdough starter, about how much I hated the rain. He listened like I was explaining the secrets of the universe. "Why are you still here?" I asked, placing the coffee cup on the nightstand. He frowned. "I live here." "No, I mean here, in this room. You have a whole empire to run, Davian. Don't you have an office? Don't you have subordinates to do this? Why are you babysitting me?" He looked down at his hands. They were resting on his thighs, large and scarred. My father's office is downstairs, he said. It smells like cigars and judgment. The war room is in the basement. It smells like blood and bad decisions. He looked up at me, his eyes dark and unguarded for the first time. This is the only quiet room in the house, he said. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was always set, as if he was bracing for a blow. You hate it, don't you? I asked softly. He stiffened. Hate what? This, the life, the business, being the prince. Davian looked away, staring at the window where the afternoon sun was fading into twilight. It's not a matter of hate or love, Seraphina. It's a matter of blood. I was born into this. It's in my DNA. You could leave, I suggested. It was a naive thing to say. I knew that, but I wanted to say it. He laughed, a dark, humorless sound. Leave and go where? There's no retirement plan in this life. You leave in a casket or you don't leave at all. He turned back to me, his expression intense. Besides, if I leave, who keeps the monsters at bay? My father is getting old. He's ruthless, but he's losing his edge. My cousin is a psychopath who would sell the city for parts. If I don't take the throne, this city burns. So you're a martyr, I said. I'm a dam, he corrected. I hold back the flood. He looked so lonely then. He looked like a man carrying the weight of the world on a spine that was slowly fracturing. I didn't think, I just moved. I reached out with my left hand and covered his. His skin was warm, his knuckles rough. He flinched at the contact, his whole body going rigid as if I had burned him. But he didn't pull away. He looked down at our hands, my pale, slender fingers resting against his large, tanned ones. The contrast was stark. You're not a monster, Davian, I whispered. He looked up, his gaze locking onto mine. The hunger in his eyes hit me like a physical wave. It wasn't just desire, though that was there, hot and heavy. It was starvation, a desperate, clawing need for something soft, something real. You don't know what I am, he rasped. You see me bringing you coffee and reading you poetry. You don't see what I do when I leave this room. You don't see the blood on my hands. I see you, I argued. I see the man who jumped over a counter to save a girl he barely knew. I see the man who brought my cat here because he knew I was worried. That man isn't a liar. That man is a liar, he said harshly. That man is trying to trick you. Then trick me, I challenged. The air between us charged with electricity. It hummed in my ears, drowning out the beep of the monitor. Davian leaned in, just an inch, then another. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with mine. His grip was tight, bordering on painful, but I didn't pull away. I squeezed back. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. I could feel the heat radiating off him. I could smell the scent of him, soap, starch, and the faint underlying scent of smoke. My heart hammered against my ribs, aching in my chest. I wanted him to kiss me. God, I wanted him to kiss me. It was insane. It was stupid. But I wanted to taste the darkness he carried. Seraphina, he breathed. His voice was a vibration against my skin. He lifted his other hand, his fingers grazing my jawline. His touch was feather-light, reverent. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, dragging it down slightly. I parted my lips, a soft exhale escaping me. His eyes dropped to my mouth. His pupils blew wide, swallowing the hazel. He looked like he was about to consume me. I shouldn't, he murmured, more to himself than to me. I'm poison, I'll make you sick. I'm already shot, I whispered. How much worse can it get? A groan rumbled in his chest. He tilted his head, closing the distance. Our noses brushed. I closed my eyes, tilting my chin up, waiting for the contact. And then he pulled back. It was abrupt, violent. He ripped his hand from mine and stood up, putting 3 feet of distance between us in a second. I opened my eyes, blinking in the sudden loss of warmth. Davian stood by the window, his back to me. His hands were braced on the sill, his shoulders heaving as he took deep, ragged breaths. I can't, he choked out. Davian. No, he cut me off, his voice hard again. No, I'm trying to be noble here, Seraphina. I'm trying to do one decent thing in my miserable life. I'm trying to get you healed so I can get you out of here. If I touch you, if I start this, I won't let you go. He turned around. His face was a mask of anguish. And you need to go, he said. You need to get as far away from me as possible. I stared at him, my hand still tingling where he had held it. I felt rejected, yes, but more than that, I felt a strange, fierce anger. You don't get to decide what I need, I said, my voice shaking. I do, he countered. Because I'm the one with the power, I'm the one with the weapons. And right now, I'm telling you that you're unsafe, not just from my enemies, from me. He walked to the door, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. I have a meeting, he said, not looking at me. The nurse will bring your dinner. He didn't wait for a response. He walked out, slamming the heavy door behind him. I sat there in the silence, staring at the closed door. My side throbbed, my heart ached. He thought he was saving me. He thought he was being the hero by pushing me away. But looking at the empty chair in the corner, at the cold cup of coffee on the nightstand, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to be saved, not if it meant being without him. I laid back against the pillows, tracing the rim of the cup with my finger. 2 sugars, splash of cream. He knew me. And whether he liked it or not, I was starting to know him too. And I wasn't going to let him push me away that easily.
Chapter 5, Davian. She was healing too fast. I watched Seraphina walk across the south garden from the window of my father's study. Her limp was gone. The hand she pressed against her side was more out of habit than necessity now. She paused by the fountain, tilting her face up to the sun, looking like a creature made of light in a world built on shadows. I hated that she was getting better. It was a sick thought, a selfish, twisted thought that belonged to the monster Seraphina swore I wasn't. But as long as she was hurt, she had to stay. As long as she was recovering, I had an excuse to keep her behind these walls, under my roof, where I could see her breathing. Once she was healed, she was free. And freedom meant danger. A polite cough drew my attention back to the room. Yuri, the consigliere, was sitting opposite me. He was a man who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. He had served my father for 25 years, and he looked at me like I was a golden retriever puppy he was waiting to euthanize. The men are talking, Davian, Yuri said. He adjusted his silk tie. It was a subtle movement, precise. Everything about Yuri was precise. Let them talk, I said, turning away from the window. Soldiers always talk. It keeps them from getting bored between shifts. They're not talking about sports or women, Yuri corrected gently. They're talking about the girl, the civilian. I sat down in the leather chair behind the massive oak desk. It wasn't my desk, it was my father's. But he was out at a meeting with the harbor authority, so I was holding court. What are they saying? I asked, my voice low. They're saying you've lost your focus. They're saying you're playing house with a stray while the Castellano family sharpens their knives. I leaned forward. Let me be clear, Yuri. The girl is a witness. She's a liability I'm managing. She's a pet, Yuri said. The word hung in the air, ugly and diminishing. I felt the rage spike in my blood, hot and fast. I wanted to reach across the desk and wrap my hands around his throat. I wanted to squeeze until that polite smile vanished. Careful, I warned. Yuri didn't flinch. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. I'm only telling you what the streets are saying, Davian. A prince who's distracted by a pretty face is a prince who can be toppled. The Castellano family smells blood in the water. If you want to lead this family, you cannot have weaknesses. And right now, she's a glowing neon sign pointing directly to your heart. He stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. Get rid of her, Davian, before someone else does it for you. He walked out, leaving the threat hanging in the heavy air of the study. I sat there for a long time, listening to the grandfather clock tick. I looked out the window again. Seraphina was gone. The garden was empty. Yuri was right. Not about her being a pet, but about her being a target. As long as she was here, she was a pawn in a game she didn't know how to play. My father tolerated her because I threatened him. The men tolerated her because they feared me. But tolerance has a shelf life, and ours had just expired. I had to let her go. The thought made my chest ache. It felt like tearing off a limb. But if I kept her, I would get her killed. The bakery was just the warning shot. Next time they wouldn't miss. I stood up. I needed to do this now before I lost my nerve. I found her in the library. She was running her hand along the spines of the old books, looking bored. She was wearing leggings and one of my hoodies that she had stolen from the laundry. It swallowed her whole. She looked tiny, vulnerable. "Come with me," I said. She jumped, turning around. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, and that simple, honest joy felt like a knife in my gut. "Where?" she asked. "The gym." She frowned. "The gym, Davian, I'm not exactly ready for a workout class." "I'm not asking you to lift weights. Come on." I turned and walked away, needing her to follow. If I looked at her too long, I would cave. I would lock the doors and keep her here forever. We walked in silence to the detached building that housed the compound's training facility. It was a stark contrast to the main house. No velvet, no wood. Just concrete, steel, and the smell of sweat and rubber. I flipped on the lights. The fluorescent hum filled the space. "Why are we here?" Seraphina asked, hugging her arms around her chest. I walked over to the mats in the center of the room. I took off my jacket and tossed it onto a bench. I rolled up my sleeves. "Because you're leaving," I said. She froze. "What?" "You're healed," I said, keeping my voice flat. "You can walk, you can move. There's no reason for you to be here anymore." She looked like I had slapped her. Her mouth opened, then closed. She blinked rapidly. "Oh, I didn't realize today." "Today," I confirmed. "But before you go, I'm going to give you something." "Money?" she asked bitterly. "Your father offered me 75,000. Is that the severance package?" I ignored the jab. "No, I'm going to teach you how to stay alive." I walked over to her. She looked wary, backing up a step. "I can't teach you to fight in an hour," I said. "And with your side healing, you can't take a hit. But I can teach you how to escape. I can teach you how to break a hold." "I don't need." "Yes, you do," I snapped, my control fraying. "The world is dangerous, Seraphina, and I've painted a target on your back. People might come for you because of me. You need to know what to do." She stared at me, her chest heaving. She looked angry, hurt, and terrified. "Fine," she whispered, "teach me." I moved into her space. "I want you to imagine someone grabs you from behind," I said. I stepped around her. My chest brushed her back. I felt her shiver. I wrapped my arms around her, pinning her arms to her sides. I was careful not to squeeze her ribs, but I made the hold firm. I trapped her. "They have you," I murmured, my mouth close to her ear. "They're bigger than you, stronger. Struggling just wastes energy. You can't outmuscle them." I could feel her heart hammering against my forearm. She was warm, soft. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to hold her tighter, to bury my face in her neck and never let go. "So what do I do?" she asked, her voice breathless. "You use pain," I said. "You use surprise." I guided her movements. "Shift your weight," I instructed. "Drop your center of gravity. Good. Now stomp hard, aim for the instep. Break the small bones in the foot." She stomped. It was tentative. "Harder," I ordered. "Meaner. Imagine it's me. Imagine I'm the one hurting you." She stomped again, harder this time. "Good, now the elbow." I moved my head back, giving her space. "Drive your elbow back. Aim for the gut or the ribs. If they're close enough, aim for the throat." She drove her elbow back. It thumped against my stomach. My abs absorbed it easily, but the form was good. Again, I said. She did it again. Again. We fell into a rhythm. Grab, stomp, strike, release. The air in the gym grew heavy, thick with heat and sweat, and the undeniable tension stretching between us. I grabbed her again, tighter this time. "Don't let me hold you," I growled. "Fight me, Seraphina." She stomped on my foot hard enough that I actually felt it through my boot. She slammed her elbow back, she twisted, she broke the hold. She spun around to face me, breathing hard. Her hair had come loose from her ponytail. Her cheeks were flushed pink. She looked fierce, she looked beautiful. I stood there, my hands empty, my chest heaving. "Good," I said roughly. "That was good." She didn't back away. She took a step toward me. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "I told you, I need you to be safe." "No, why are you pushing me away?" "Because I have to," I yelled. The shout echoed off the concrete walls. I paced away from her, running my hands through my hair. I felt like a caged animal. "Yuri is right," I said, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You make me weak." She flinched. I stared at the floor. "When you're here, I don't think about the business. I don't think about the war. I think about you. I think about how you take your coffee. I think about how soft your skin is. I think about stripping that hoodie off you and finding out if you have freckles anywhere else." I looked up at her. Her eyes were wide, dark pools. "I'm a liability to this family as long as you're my distraction," I said. "And you're a dead woman walking if you stay near me." I walked back to her. I couldn't stop myself. I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame, knowing it would burn. I stopped inches from her. I reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. My hand lingered on her jaw. "I want to keep you," I whispered. "I want to lock you in my tower and throw away the key. I want to ruin you for anyone else." "Davian," she breathed. She leaned into my touch. She turned her face, pressing a kiss to the center of my palm. The sensation shattered me. It was so trusting, so intimate. I grabbed the back of her neck. I pulled her to me. Our bodies collided. My other hand gripped her waist, careful of her wound, but desperate to feel her against me. I lowered my head. Her lips parted. She let out a small, needy sound that went straight to my groin. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to devour her. I wanted to claim her so thoroughly that she would never be able to leave. I hovered there, our breath mingling. I could taste her, vanilla and mint. "Kiss me," she whispered. The plea nearly broke me. But then I saw it, the bruise on her wrist from the IV, the stiffness in the way she held her side. I had done that. And if I kissed her now, if I took this, I would never have the strength to let her go. And the next time she got hurt, it wouldn't be a graze. It would be a coffin. "I can't," I choked out. I tore myself away from her. It took every ounce of physical strength I possessed. I stepped back, my hands shaking. "The car is waiting at the front," I said. My voice was cold, dead. It wasn't my voice. It was the prince's voice. "Davian, go." She stared at me, her eyes filled with tears. She looked devastated. Then her expression hardened. She lifted her chin. She pulled the dignity around her like a cloak. "Goodbye, Davian," she said. She turned and walked out of the gym. She didn't look back. I watched her go. I watched the door swing shut behind her. And then I turned and punched the heavy bag, so hard the chain snapped. It crashed to the floor with a dull thud. I stood there in the silence, my knuckles bleeding, my chest hollow. She was safe, she was gone. I had done the right thing. So why did it feel like I had just made the biggest mistake of my life?
Chapter 6, Seraphina. My apartment smelled like stale air and regret. I stood in the doorway, my keys still clutched in my hand, staring at the space that used to feel like my sanctuary. It was a studio on the third floor of a walk-up that had seen better decades, let alone days. The linoleum in the kitchenette was peeling at the corners. The window had a draft that whistled when the wind picked up. The couch was a hand-me-down from a neighbor who had moved to Arizona. Before the bakery exploded, this place was my independence. It was proof that I was making it on my own. Now it just looked small and unsafe. I stepped inside and closed the door. I reached for the lock, but my hand hesitated. The old flimsy deadbolt was gone. In its place was a heavy brushed steel mechanism that looked like it belonged on a vault, not a pre-war apartment door. There was a keypad above the handle, and a reinforcement plate drilled into the frame. I ran my thumb over the cold metal. Davian. He hadn't just dropped me off at the curb like a bag of laundry. He had sent a team ahead. They had fortified my tiny life while I was busy getting my heart broken in his gym. I locked the door. The thud of the bolt sliding home was heavy, final. I walked further into the room. There was a small black dome mounted in the corner of the ceiling near the entrance, a camera. I checked the window, new latches, sensors. I wasn't free. I was just in a different cage. I sat down on the edge of my lumpy mattress and buried my face in my hands. Hamlet, my traitorous cat, rubbed against my ankles, purring loud enough to rattle his ribs. He had arrived an hour before me, delivered in a luxury pet carrier that probably cost more than my rent. He looked fatter. Even my cat preferred the MAFIA lifestyle. I hate him, I whispered to the empty room. It was a lie, a terrible, jagged lie. I didn't hate Davian. I missed him. I missed the way he smelled like cedarwood and smoke. I missed the way he sat in the corner of the room, guarding me while I slept. I missed the way he looked at me like I was something rare and precious, right up until the moment he decided I was a liability and threw me away. You make me weak. His words echoed in my head, bouncing off the peeling paint. I lay back on the bed, wincing as my side pulled. I pulled up my shirt to look at the bandage. Underneath, the angry red line of the incision was healing, knitting together into a puckered pink scar. It was ugly. It was a permanent brand. A reminder that I had flown too close to the sun and gotten burned. A month passed in a blur of gray days. I went back to work, but it wasn't the same. The bakery had reopened. Davian's anonymous donation had paid for the repairs and then some. The new glass was reinforced. There were security guards who pretended to be customers, sitting by the door with earpieces they tried to hide. I ignored them. I ignored the black SUV that sometimes drove past slowly, but never stopped. I focused on the dough, kneading, rolling, baking. But my side ached when I lifted the heavy flour sacks. I tired easily. And every time the bell chimed, I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat, hopping it was him, fearing it was him. It never was. He had kept his word. He was staying away. By the fourth Friday, I was climbing the walls. The silence in my apartment was deafening. The security camera blinking in the corner felt like a judgment. I needed to get out. I needed to feel like a person again, not a patient or a victim. I called Iris. She was a barista at the coffee shop down the street, loud and fun and delightfully uncomplicated. We're going out, I told her. Finally, she screamed into the phone. I thought you died or joined a convent. Wear something hot. We're going to the Copper Door. The Copper Door was a dive bar 3 blocks over. It smelled like bleach and bad decisions. It was perfect. I stood in front of my warped full-length mirror and made a choice. I pulled a dress from the back of my closet. I had bought it at a thrift store 2 years ago and never worn it because it felt too bold, too much. It was a slip dress, deep emerald green silk that skimmed my body like water. It had thin straps and a low back. It showed the bruise on my hip that was fatting to yellow. It didn't hide the bandage on my side. But I didn't care. I put on heels. I put on dark lipstick. I looked at myself. I looked dangerous. I looked like a woman who wasn't waiting for a prince to save her. Let's do this, I said. The bar was crowded. loud and sticky. The air was thick with the smell of hops and sweat. A month ago, I would have hated it. Tonight, I welcomed the noise. It drowned out the thoughts in my head. Iris was already at the bar, waving me over. We ordered shots of tequila that tasted like gasoline. We danced to music that was too bass-heavy. We laughed at things that weren't funny. For an hour, I felt normal. Then he sat down next to me. He was a guy, just a guy. Flannel shirt, beard, eyes that were a little too glazed. He slid onto the stool beside me, while Iris was in the bathroom. "Buy you a drink," he slurred. "No thanks," I said, shouting to be heard over the music. "I'm good." "Come on, sweetheart, just one drink. You look lonely." "I'm not lonely," I said, turning my back to him. "I'm waiting for a friend." He didn't take the hint. He leaned in closer, his breath hot and smelling of cheap beer against my neck. "You're too pretty to be here alone," he muttered. I stiffened. I scanned the room for Iris, but she was nowhere to be seen. I scanned the room for something else. Instinctively, I looked for the shadows. I looked for the guards. But this wasn't the bakery. This was just a bar. I was on my own. The guy's hand landed on my waist. It was heavy and presumptive. His fingers dug into the soft flesh of my side, right on the scar. Pain flared, sharp and sudden. I gasped, flinching away violently. "Don't touch me," I snapped. He laughed, tightening his grip. "Relax, you're tense. What's this, a bandage? You get into a cat fight." He pressed his thumb into the wound. It hurt bad. But more than the pain, it was the violation. That scar was mine. It was the memory of the worst night of my life, and the best. It was where Davian had saved me. "Get off me." I shoved his chest, but he was heavy and anchored to the stool. "Hey, don't be a," he sneered. The air in the bar changed. It wasn't a sound. The music didn't stop. The people didn't stop talking. But the temperature dropped 10 degrees. The hairs on my arms stood up. I looked toward the door. Davian was there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing black jeans and a black t-shirt that clung to his chest, with a leather jacket open over it. He looked lethal. He looked like a dark god who had descended from Olympus to burn the world. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He wasn't looking at the bartender. His eyes were locked on the stranger's hand on my waist. I stopped breathing. Davian didn't walk, he stalked. He cut through the crowd like a shark through water. People instinctively moved out of his way, sensing the violence radiating off him in waves. The guy next to me didn't notice. He was too busy leaning in, trying to whisper something gross in my ear. He never got the chance. One second the guy was sitting there, the next he was flying backward. Davian had grabbed him by the back of his flannel collar and yanked him off the stool with terrifying ease. The guy crashed into a table behind us, sending glasses shattering to the floor. The bar went silent. The music seemed to stutter. The guy scrambled up, looking confused and angry. "Hey, what the hell, man?" Davian stepped into his space. He didn't shout. He didn't roar. He was deadly calm. "Touch her again," Davian said, his voice low and vibrating with a dark promise, "and I will remove your hand at the wrist." The guy blinked. He looked at Davian's face, the dead eyes, the set jaw, the sheer size of him, and his survival instincts finally kicked in. He paled. He looked at me, then back at Davian. I didn't know she was with you," he stammered. "She isn't with me," Davian said. "She is mine. There's a difference. Get out." The guy didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled toward the exit, nearly tripping over his own feet in his haste to get away from the predator in the leather jacket. Davian watched him go, his chest heaving. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Slowly, he turned to face me. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I should have been angry. I should have been furious that he was here, ruining my night, claiming ownership of me like I was a piece of property. But all I felt was relief. And heat. He looked at me. He looked at the green silk dress. He looked at the exposed skin of my back, the lipstick on my mouth. His jaw ticked. "What are you doing here?" he rasped. I slid off the stool, standing my ground. I stood tall in my heels, though I still had to look up at him. "I'm having a drink," I said. "It's a free country, Davian." "You're testing me," he said. "Testing you?" I laughed, but it sounded breathless. "I haven't seen you in a month. You dumped me, remember? You sent me away for my own good." "I sent you away to keep you safe," he growled, stepping closer. He invaded my personal space, boxing me in against the bar. "And look at you. You're in a dive bar on the edge of Castellano territory, wearing a dress that's basically an invitation for trouble, letting some drunk touch you." "He touched me," I argued. "I didn't let him." "He touched the wound," Davian said. His eyes dropped to my waist. "I saw him," he pressed on it. His voice broke on the last word. He reached out, his hand hovering over my side, shaking slightly. "Did he hurt you?" I stared at him. The anger in his eyes was fading, replaced by that familiar, devastating worry. "Yes," I whispered. A growl rumbled in his chest. "I tried, Seraphina," he said. He sounded desperate. "I stayed away. I watched the cameras. I let you have your space. But I can't do this. I can't watch some random idiot put his hands on you." "Then stop watching," I shouted, pushing against his chest. "I can't," he roared back. The bar was starring. I didn't care. "You say I make you weak," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "You say I'm a liability, so you leave me alone in that apartment with nothing but locks and cameras to keep me company. You think that's saving me. It's lonely, Davian, it's miserable." I grabbed the lapels of his leather jacket and yanked him down. "I would rather be in danger with you than safe without you." Davian froze. He stared at me, his expression shattering. "You don't mean that," he whispered. "I do. I'm tired of being sensible. I'm tired of being afraid." I looked at his mouth. "Take me home, Davian." Something snapped in him. I saw it happen. The restraint, the nobility, the walls he had built, they all crumbled. He grabbed my hand. His grip was iron. "Let's go." He didn't wait for me to close my tab. He didn't wait for Iris. "Sorry, Iris." He dragged me toward the back exit, kicking the door open. We spilled out into the alleyway. The air was cool and smelled of rain. He didn't stop. He marched me to a sleek black sports car parked by the dumpster, not the SUV. This was his car, his escape. He opened the passenger door and practically shoved me inside. He slammed it shut and rounded the hood, sliding into the driver's seat. He started the engine. It roared to life, a deep, guttural growl that matched the man driving it. He peeled out of the alley, tires screeching. "Where are we going?" I asked, my pulse racing. "Not your apartment," he said, gripping the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. "I'm done with that place." "Then where?" "My penthouse," he said. He glanced at me. His eyes were dark, hungry, and full of a terrifying possessiveness. "And this time, I'm not letting you leave."
Chapter 7, Dovun. I drove like I was trying to outrun my own shadow. The speedometer climbed past 90 as we tore down the highway, the city lights blurring into streaks of neon violence against the dark glass of the windshield. My knuckles were white on the leather steering wheel. I could feel the leather groaning under my grip, threatening to tear, just like my restraint. Beside me, Seraphina was silent. She wasn't cowering, she wasn't crying. She was sitting perfectly still, staring out the window, her jaw set in a line of stubborn defiance that made me want to shake her and kiss her until she forgot her own name. I risked a glance at her. The street lights slashed across her face, illuminating the sharp curve of her cheekbone, the dark lipstick that made her mouth look sinful, the pale column of her throat. She was wearing a green dress that was nothing but a scrap of silk and a prayer. It clung to every curve, exposing the creamy skin of her back, the slope of her shoulders. It was a dress made for sin, and she had worn it to a dive bar full of wolves. I tightened my grip on the wheel, the anger flaring hot and bright in my chest. It wasn't anger at her, not really. It was anger at myself. I had tried, God, I had tried. For 30 days, I had lived like a monk. I had sat in my cold, empty penthouse and watched the grainy feed from the security cameras I'd installed in her hallway. I watched her leave for work. I watched her come home. I watched her struggle to open a jar of pasta sauce with her healing side. And I had nearly punched a hole in my wall because I wasn't there to open it for her. I stayed away because I was supposed to be the noble protector, the martyr. And tonight, that nobility had almost gotten her hurt. I saw the way that drunk touched her. I saw his filthy hand digging into her waist, right over the scar I had put there. I saw the flash of pain in her eyes. And I snapped. The tether I had kept on my beast broke. The distance I had placed between us evaporated. I took the exit for the city center, the tires screeching in protest. "You have a death wish," I rasped. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, rough, raw. Seraphina didn't look at me. "I have a life wish," she countered, her voice steady. "There's a difference." "A life wish," I scoffed. "Going to the copper door without a detail, that isn't living, Seraphina. That's suicide. Do you know whose territory that is? Do you know what they would have done to you if they knew who you were to me?" "I'm nothing to you," she shot back. "You made that very clear when you dumped me at my apartment and ghosted me for a month." "I didn't ghost you," I snarled. "I was watching you." "That is worse," she yelled, finally turning to look at me. Her eyes were blazing. "That is so much worse, Davian." I pulled the car up to the curb of my building, not the compound. This was the apex, my sanctuary. 60 floors of glass and steel rising above the filth of the city. It was the only place I felt like myself, and not just the dawn sun. I killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was heavy, suffocating. I got out, slamming the door. I rounded the hood and ripped her door open. "Get out." She glared at me, but she slid out of the low seat. Her heels clicked on the pavement. She shivered in the cool night air, hugging her bare arms. I shrugged off my leather jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She tried to shrug it off. "Leave it," I ordered. She stopped fighting, pulling the lapels taut. It smelled like me. Seeing her wrapped in my leather, her small frame swallowed by my scent, did something dangerous to my blood pressure. I grabbed her hand, her good hand, and dragged her toward the private entrance. We rode the elevator in silence. The numbers climbed. 10, 20, 40. The tension in the small metal box was thick enough to choke on. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the rapid beat of her heart. I could smell the cheap tequila she'd been drinking, mixed with the vanilla scent of her skin. It was intoxicating. The doors slid open directly into the penthouse. I pulled her inside. The lights flickered on automatically, illuminating the stark modern space. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Black marble floors, white leather furniture. It was cold, impersonal. But tonight, with her standing in the middle of it in that green dress, it felt alive. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I punched in the code for the perimeter alarm. "There," I said, turning to face her. "You're safe. No one gets in here without my biometrics. No one touches you." She stood in the center of the living room, looking around. She looked out of place, a vibrant splash of color in my monochrome world. "So this is it?" she asked, her voice hollow. "I just moved from one cage to another, first the apartment, now the penthouse." "This isn't a cage," I said, walking toward her. "This is a fortress. It feels the same from the inside." She turned to face me. She looked tired now. The adrenaline from the bar was fading, leaving her pale and fragile. I walked up to her, invading her space. I needed to check her side. The image of that man pressing his thumb into her scar was burned into my retinas. "Let me see," I said. "What?" The wound, he touched it. I need to see if you're bleeding. I'm fine, she said, taking a step back. Seraphina. No, she said firmly. You don't get to play doctor anymore. You don't get to act like you care about my health while you're actively breaking my heart. The words hit me like a physical blow. Breaking your heart, I repeated softly. She looked away, biting her lip. You think this has been easy for me? I asked. I took another step, cornering her against the back of the white sofa. You think I enjoyed staying away? It looked easy, she whispered. You didn't call, you didn't write, you just vanished. I didn't vanish, I growled. I was everywhere. Who do you think paid your rent this month? Who do you think fixed the street lights on your block? Who do you think fired the creepy superintendent who had the master key? Her head snapped up. You did that. I leaned in, bracing my hands on the back of the sofa on either side of her, trapping her. I did everything, I said intensely. My face was inches from hers. I spent every waking moment of the last 30 days making sure your world was perfect, making sure you didn't need me. Well, you failed, she said, her voice shook. I froze. What? You failed, she repeated, because I still needed you. I stared at her. Her eyes were swimming with tears, but she held my gaze. She looked fierce and vulnerable and absolutely devastating. I hate my apartment, she said. It's too quiet. I hate the bakery guards because they aren't you. I hate that I look for your car every time I walk outside. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched my chest. Her palm rested over my heart, which was beating so hard I thought it might crack a rib. You stayed away to keep me alive, she whispered. But Davian, I felt like I was dying anyway. Something inside me snapped. The last thread of my control, the final brick in the wall I had built to keep her out, it all disintegrated. I let out a sound that was half groan, half growl. Seraphina, I warned, my voice ragged. You need to stop. Why? Because I'm hanging by a thread, I admitted. Because if you keep looking at me like that, I'm going to forget all the reasons why I shouldn't touch you. Then forget them, she challenged. She stepped closer, closing the final inch of distance between our bodies. She tilted her chin up. Her lips parted. Stop protecting me, she whispered, and start wanting me. The invitation broke me. I didn't think, I didn't plan. I just reacted. I crashed my mouth onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It wasn't sweet. It was a collision. It was 30 days of starvation ending in a feast. It was anger and desperation and love, all tangled up in teeth and tongue. I wrapped my arms around her, crushing her to my chest. I lifted her off her feet, needing her closer, needing to feel every inch of her against me. She made a noise in the back of her throat, a whimper of surrender that drove me insane. Her arms went around my neck, her fingers tangling in my hair, pulling me deeper. She tasted like tequila and salvation. I walked us backward blindly until my legs hit the coffee table. I didn't care. I kicked it out of the way. I moved toward the kitchen island, needing a surface, needing leverage. I sat her on the edge of the marble counter. I stepped between her legs, pressing my hips against hers. The friction was electric. I was hard, painfully so, straining against my jeans. I broke the kiss, gasping for air. We were both panting, our foreheads resting against each other. Tell me to stop, I rasped. Tell me to stop, Seraphina, and I'll walk out that door and never come back. She grabbed my face in her hands. She looked me dead in the eye. Don't you dare, she said. That was it. Permission granted. Hell, permission demanded. I attacked her mouth again, kissing her jaw, her throat, the sensitive spot behind her ear. I shoved the leather jacket off her shoulders, letting it pool on the floor. My hands roamed over the green silk, memorizing the shape of her. My hands skimmed down her side, over the bump of the bandage beneath the fabric. I slowed, my touch turning gentle. "Does it hurt?" I murmured against her skin. "No," she gasped, her head thrown back. "Not when you touch it." I hated that scar. I hated that I put it there. But tonight, I was going to worship it. I was going to rewrite the memory of pain with pleasure. I reached for the hem of her dress. "We're not going back," I said, looking into her eyes. My voice was dark, possessive. "The apartment is done. The watching from the car is done." She nodded, her eyes dilated and dark. "Okay. You live here now," I said. "With me, in my bed, in my life, no more running, no more hiding." She wrapped her legs tighter around my waist, pulling me back in. "Okay," she whispered against my lips. I kissed her again, sealing the pact. I knew the war was coming. I knew my father would be furious. I knew the Castellano family would come for us. But in that moment, with Seraphina in my arms and the city lights glittering below us, I didn't care. Let them come. Let them try to take her. I was the heir, I was the prince. And tonight I was claiming my queen.